this computer. Hello, everybody. And by everybody, I mean so far Diane. Welcome to our April Earth Day month sustainable living class with our fantastic instructor, Aili, who is right next to me and preparing some notes. Obviously, you can hear me, so I get to skip the "can you hear me now" part of the speech. So yeah, this is really exciting. I know classes doing virtually is a little weird, but we're glad we're still having them. And so in honor of Earth Month, Aili will teach us how to live more sustainably. And I will get out of the way because I know you are not here to see me. So take it away, Aili, and I will hand you the mouse because you know what you're doing.
Thank you.
Hello.
Okay, so I'm going to try to share. Diane, can you see my screen still or no?
I can see you, yes.
I'm going to start sharing my screen so that you can see the presentation.
It's all there. Oh,
I don't want
you just left, but maybe you'll be back.
Oh, you can't see me anymore?
Now, oh, you just came back. Oh, no, you're not. You're going in and out, I guess.
Can you still see me when I'm talking though?
Yes.
Yep. So
I see. What happens is when I talk, then it just shows my name instead of your screen.
Yeah.
So if I just stay quiet, then I'll keep seeing you. I just now made that, connected the dots on that.
Yep.
Okay.
And then there's an option, like I have my video up and your video panel. So there's an option on the top of where you're seeing your video or my video to change that to who you're viewing during the presentation, so you can like keep me on there, view presenter. Does that make sense?
An option on my screen.
Yeah, so if there's like a little black box with my face in it, if you scroll up, there's like a bar on the very top that has a minimize button, a show small active speaker video. But if it doesn't matter, I'll just keep talking and then my face will be there the whole time.
Okay.
So if that works for you. If that's fine, but there's an option.
That's fine.
So, anyway, this is Harmony Co-op's Sustainable Living Workshop, or I don't know what you call them, classes for sustainable living to honor Earth Month or Earth Day in April 22nd. So I'm just going to go through a quick PowerPoint presentation that I put together to talk about composting, recycling, and sustainability. And then if you have any questions, feel free to either raise your hand or just interrupt me. I want it to be more of like a discussion and not me just talking all the time. So if you have any questions that come up or comments, feel free to chime in. So my name is Aili Kultala. I graduated from Veggie State University with a degree in environmental science. Last year, I served Beltrami County as a Minnesota Green Corps member, which is an AmeriCorps program. So I was helping Beltrami County with their new compost program that they started a few years back. So I was helping with waste reduction, recycling, and compost. I've served for the Bemidji State University Sustainability Office for a while, working on waste reduction on campus. And then I also had an internship at Sanford Health Center, or the hospital, not Sanford Defense Center. It's confusing, but the Sanford Hospital. And then I learned a lot about like specialty waste that goes around in the ER or the hospital, and that was super fun. So I am Bemidji's resident self-proclaimed waste nerd. So here we go. Composting is our first subject. So why should we compost? There's a few reasons why. It reduces waste to landfills. So our landfill space is limited. We shouldn't fill that up with a lot of materials that could otherwise be composted or recycled. We should put those in the right stream or the waste stream and compost them. And it has more benefit if we compost because it improves soil quality and water retention, which helps with erosion. So it can go full circle. You grow your food, you compost your food, that compost can go back into the soil and help grow more food because the soil quality is improved. And then compost also, or food waste, should not be incinerated. So that's another way that we're dealing with waste today, is that we have incineration. Beltrami County incinerates some of their garbage. So compost going into the incineration isn't as efficient because it's wet organic material, so it's not energy efficient. And then most importantly, in my opinion, is that organic material that goes into the landfill not only takes up space, but it decomposes in landfills, contrary to popular belief that it will just decompose in a landfill. The environment in a landfill is not the same as if you compost those food scraps. So when those food scraps go in the landfill, they produce methane gas when they break down, and methane gas is not good for the atmosphere and the air and the environment. It's more powerful than carbon dioxide. So composting with Beltrami County, there's a few, I forget that Kate has this mouse, so I'm trying to use the touch pad, but so composting in Beltrami County is pretty easy. We have a commercial composting setup now so that you are able to compost more things than you would be able to if you're composting at home. So what you can compost in Beltrami County are food scraps, so fruits and vegetables, bread, grain, rice. You can even compost meat, bones, and dairy and meat, and that's something that you don't want to compost in your backyard compost. So it's great that we have this other resource in the community now for composting like more compost. So not just your household waste, but like at a bigger volume. And then we can also compost way more products than we could in our backyard. So like the compostable paper plates, for example, Harmony actually has compostable coffee cups and soup bowls and soup lids that look like plastic, but they're a little different. And so those are all compostable in the compost facility that we have now in Polk County, but we're shared with a 5-county region. So it's Beltrami, Monoman, Polk County, Hubbard County, and what's another one? I think it's Clearwater is next to us. So it's like our 5 counties all put our food scraps to the compost facility there. You can also compost like your coffee filters and your coffee grounds. It's super good for the compost to have all that material in there, and then paper towels and napkins and like low grade paper is also acceptable in the compost, whereas you might like you can't recycle compost or can't recycle compostable like paper towels and napkins because they're low grade paper. Alternatively, you can compost them instead of landfilling them. Obvious things that you should leave out of the compost are listed there. So those should be recycled or thrown in the garbage. So like metal, glass, plastic. Milk cartons are not compostable. I did some composting at Trek North High School during my Green Corps service, and a lot of the students want to compost cartons or like other things end up in there, and that contaminates the compost. But it does get sorted out once it goes to the compost facility. And I'm going to go over that in a little bit, but they sort all that stuff out. And then cat litter should also not be composted. That might not be as obvious of a one. But if you want to start composting with Beltrami County Solid Waste, this is a graphic that I made as a Green Corps member. That was in a flyer that we put out, and then as education materials. But if you want to start composting with Beltrami County, you can go to the transfer station and sign up. We'll just have you. I'm not sure. Diane, are you already composting with Beltrami County?
Well, I have 2 compost, let's see, I have 2 compost bins in my backyard. So I compost most of our food waste there. But I do have questions about taking compostable materials to Beltrami County, to the transfer station. For the past year, I've just been totally bamboozled about what to do with the the containers that come with takeout foods. And I've tried to do the right thing, and I've taken some things to Beltrami County that say compostable, and they'll a guy will look at them and say, well, no, this isn't, because it needs to say blah 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 on it, and but it says compostable, but he says, no, it needs to say something else, some seal of approval or something. And so I've been very confused about that. And I've been saying to people I know that Aili needs to put, or somebody, maybe you aren't employed with them anymore, are you?
No, I'm not, but I would
Yeah.
definitely, come out and do
So,
that in my time.
I didn't know that you weren't there anymore, but I've been saying Aili needs to put an article in the paper telling us what to do with all this stuff because it's so confusing.
Yeah,
But the big deal is the takeout containers, and we try to not order takeout because of that. Even though they might say they're compostable, there's still a lot of confusion.
yeah, and that's unfortunate. It is a new thing in our community specifically to have like a commercial compost facility, and then I feel that they purposely make packaging confusing. And we'll get to
Yeah.
recycling. But even for compostable products, like, and I didn't put this in the presentation, but it's a good point, is that like biodegradable is not compostable. So like you'll
Okay.
take out containers or take out silverware, like the plastic silverware that looks more like it's the compostable kind, and it'll say biodegradable on it. But that just means that it like breaks down into smaller parts, but it doesn't fully turn back into something that would like you could put in the soil. So you just
Uh-huh.
the biodegradable
Okay.
plastics just kind of like break down into smaller bits and they are still in the soil. Whereas like compostable products like a paper towel or a napkin or like that paper plate that's in the picture, that will fully break down and like return to the soil and not still be like small plastic bits.
So we want them to say compostable on them.
And so that's what this, I don't know if you can see my cursor. So this compost
Yeah.
API in industrial facilities is a lot on a lot of compostable products.
Okay.
That's the certification that most compost facilities look for because they've gone through like an intensive product review and everything to get certified so it is compostable. So
Okay.
that may be what they're looking for. You can tell me
Probably.
what restaurant you're going to, and I might be able to know if those ones are compostable. Like I know that Bridget's has compostable containers that I compost, and then Table for Seven does. I think the brewery does actually too. Bemidji Brewing has their compostable takeout containers. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
Does
Okay.
that help you?
Yes, that does help. I know a lot more already than I did.
Yeah.
And so also, I have always thought that all of the clamshells were not compostable, but then I saw in Harmony on their recycling containers that it looks like clamshells are compostable. So I'm confused about that.
Ooh. So I should go and grab actually the clamshells that Harmony is using in their deli cases.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kate's gonna go grab them so I can answer that a little better. Because like plastic clamshells, and I'll show this in the recycling bit after this composting section. There's a plastic that looks like it's compostable and it says it's PLA number 7, and I'll show the symbol for it. And those compost facilities usually do not want that material. And so that's where I was like, they purposely make products and packaging look confusing for composting and recycling
Wow.
to be more
Sure do.
standardized, and you shouldn't be able to put on there that it's biodegradable because not everyone's going to know that biodegradable does not equal a compostable material, or if you say that it's compostable, like that doesn't necessarily mean that your compost facility wants that product.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm
Okay.
gonna go grab those clamshells so I can see exactly what material it is because I'm not really familiar with those. I know that they have like the coffee cups that are compostable and they say compostable on the coffee cup. And then they have like the soup cups that you buy at Harmony, and it's just like national co-op grocers like everywhere. So if you go to the co-op in the city, they're gonna have the same cups. Or if you go to Michigan and there's a co-op that's part of the same national co-op grocers organization, they all have like the same branded cups and stools and lids and plates if they have a hot deli, which Harmony's putting on the hot deli. So they'll probably have plates in like the the boxes, and those should be compostable too if they're the same branded co-op logo. And then I believe that all of those products have that EPI compostable certification on them. So,
Okay.
and I've seen them all in the compost container at Beltrami County. So those are all acceptable. But when she comes back, I'll take a look at it and see what it says. So
I do have another. Oh, I have another question while you're waiting for Kate.
Yeah.
This is not about composting, but it's about, I guess, what is recyclable, and maybe you'll be getting to that. But every time I open organic chicken breasts and there's that green tray, I have not known what to do with those. And one time I asked at the transfer station, and I said, this isn't a bottle or a jar, but it has a 1 or a 2 on it. And they said, then it's recyclable. And it's one of those green trays. You know what I'm talking about?
They're like styrofoam, right?
No, it's it's plastic.
Like this, or like a clamshell.
No, it's a green tray that 2 chicken breasts are in, the organic chicken breasts.
Yeah, this is, if I saw it, I'd probably be able to tell you. I don't eat meat, so it's hard for me to remember what those would look like. But if it does have a 1 or 2 on it, they should accept that.
So it doesn't have to be a bottle or a
No.
a container with a neck on it or something. Okay, that's good.
That's my understanding. I feel like John Steiner, who is at the Polk County solid waste guy, director for Polk County, who runs our material recovering facility, which I'll show you. I haven't heard from him that they're only accepting bottles and with necks on them anymore. Like, I feel like that's an old rule to go by and not kind of like a recycling myth. I think that anything that's number 1 or 2 goes through, and I'll show you the process. It goes through and gets like sorted out by its resin code.
Okay.
So it shouldn't matter what shape that it's in, from my understanding of like, and what I've seen there. I've been on tour there, so I have never seen them like eject all of that stuff, as long as it's the right resin code, and I'll show you how that looks. But these are the clamshells that you're talking about from Harmony.
Yes.
Yeah, so those are recyclable.
Okay. Okay.
Because
that's good to know. Thank you.
So they have like a number on the bottom, and I'll have a picture of this so you can see it better. But there's like the little triangle with the number 1 in it.
Yeah.
So anything with the number 1 or 2, Beltrami County should accept.
Okay, great.
Processing system. Yeah. So does that help? Hopefully.
Yes, very helpful.
Yeah. So let's see what's after this. So here's a little infographic of how the commercial composting process works after being delivered. So there's a little truck. Right now we don't have a delivery or hauling system for compost in Beltrami County. But if you bring your compost to the transfer station, that compost is put into a large 30 cubic yard dumpster. And if you've been participating in the compost, you're probably familiar with what that looks like. Well,
yes.
The transfer station. So it's dumped there, and then they bring it over to Polk County, where the commercial compost facility is, and then those feedstocks are mixed with browns and greens, so nitrogen and carbon-rich materials, and they're mixed together, and they're kind of like screened, and any contaminants are sorted out of them, and then they're broken down, and then this mixture of the carbon and nitrogen-rich materials are put in really long windrows or piles, but they're called windrows, and then they sit there for 3 to 4 weeks, and they heat up. So the compost there has to get to a certain temperature, and I've heard it so many times and I'm blanking on it, but it heats up to a temperature to kill any bacteria, and that is why commercial compost facilities can compost meat and cheese and different things that your backyard compost should not have in it. And then they have big trucks that go over the top of the windrow pile, and it's kind of like a snowblower effect, and it picks up the dirt or the compost and blows it, and then it makes a new pile, so it turns it over, and that air also helps the composting process along. And if you have backyard compost, you should know like to turn it over and aerate your compost every few weeks. So if you're composting at home, I'm sure you're doing that. But then the material is left there and moved again, and then it's oftentimes screened down again, or like made to be smaller, like the compost that you'd see in like the bags that you get at the nursery or wherever you can buy compost, or your own compost at home. I have compost at home. I don't screen it and do all that fancy stuff to it, but there are ways to do that at home on a smaller scale too, to like make a more refined product. But the more often you turn it, I'll show you some different bins too. It'll naturally decompose to that smaller, what you're used to seeing in a compost bag. So, and then there's like the safety part on the very bottom of that. So it's like screened out to sort out any like glass or different things, contaminants, plastic, metals that are that might have ended up in the compost. But we try to educate on source separation at in your kitchen or at your school lunchroom or wherever you're trying to source separate your organic waste out, so that that stuff doesn't end up into the compost, because it's takes time and money to do all that stuff and sort it out. So anyway, any questions on composting process?
No, that's a good visual there.
Yeah, I really like that. I have like actual pictures of the compost facility in Polk County, but it's kind of underwhelming at the time when I visited, because it was just brand new, so the piles weren't like very big at that point, or I saw one of the trucks moving, but it doesn't really explain the whole process going through. So here's some pictures.
Aili,
Yeah.
how often do the trucks go to Polk County with our composting, our compost?
Good question. So when I was a Green Corps member, we filled up and emptied a few bins, and I think my total compost that we total weight that we delivered there, because they go over a big scale and they're weighed, and I think it was like BSU alone composted 9 tons, and so they filled up our 30 cubic yard compost bin fairly regularly, but maybe like 2 or 3 times a year or something, I'm thinking. So it's, I mean, that's why that's why they chose to do these big bins, is so that they would, well, that's not right. So that they would like fill up and they wouldn't have to transport them as often, because that's one of our struggles as like a rural solid waste management, is that our transportation to the MRF in Polk County or to the compost facility in Polk County, and the landfill is also over there, is that it's like transportation costs of going around and doing that sort of thing. So they wanted to have that big, large compost collection point so that they'd have to transport it less often. But I think it was more often than that. And I think it slowed down though after I left Green Corps and the solid waste transfer station. And they took that large metal cubic or the 30-yard dumpster, and they took that out, and then they just have like normal garbage cans there now that are green for you to put your compost in, and then they bring those garbage cans down to the tipping floor, like below where you see all those piles of garbage and recycling there. And so then they're having less contamination that way of having a smaller bin, and more control over like if they can see it. Like I used to have to crawl halfway into that compost bin and like pull out recycling, because people, even though it was locked, like we locked it so that people wouldn't be able to throw whatever in there, I would open the doors of this thing every so often and check for contamination, and I'd pull full bags of recycling out. And so fear of like taking all their labels off their soup cans, which you don't really have to do, and they had like only metal soup cans in a bag, and like only pop cans in another bag, and glass in another bag, which you don't have to do anymore for recycling.
Yeah.
Put in the compost bin, and I was like, but you did all this work to recycle properly, and now it's like Oh,
in
yeah.
the compost.
Compost,
Oh
Um,
my gosh.
yeah, but they do it fairly frequently. The participants
Okay.
doubled when I was there as a Green Corps member, but it's still nowhere near as much as like Hubbard County has a lot of participants. Like 300, I think maybe was the last number I heard. But so our volume could be greatly increased if we had more participation, and then like COVID slowed things down, but we could be going through those bins and filling them up more frequently. So I'm hoping that happens.
Sure.
So I'm curious to know how you compost at home.
Well, I've only lived at this house for 2 years. At my previous house, where our family was for decades, we had a couple of bins like in your picture, and we also just had piles on the ground that we would turn over. But since I moved to a little house in town, I had to be neater, and so I have 2 bins that are kind of like the one in the upper right corner of your slide here.
Do you have one of these?
Yeah, kind of like that. It's a different shape, but it has a lid on top and a little thing at the bottom for pulling out the compost.
Yep.
And I try to turn it around in there and add leaves, and it's worked pretty well. Also, last summer we built a 4x8 raised bed and just dumped all of one container into the bed. And it was part of it was composted and part of it wasn't.
Okay.
But I was told that was fine to do that. And we're going to build another 4x8 pretty soon here, and you know, when I'm filling the next 4x8, I'll put another container full of compost in that one.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think just like dumping it in would be fine. I have a friend, and actually maybe you know them, but they have a keyhole garden. And so they just have like a big round garden that's pretty high so they can garden standing up. And then they have like a where you walk in to the circle, and then there's just another hole, kind of like a donut, and then they have a mesh like chicken wire in the middle of that. So they just dump all their compost in the middle of their garden, and then that compost naturally breaks down in the middle, and all those nutrients will soak through into their soil that's growing their plants. So it's really
that's awesome.
cool. Yeah. Go ahead.
I haven't seen that. No.
Yeah, I just thought about that because with your dumping it into the 4x6 raised bed, that I could have included a picture of that style on here too, because that's a little like low maintenance, like you don't have to turn it over, and it's just basically dumping it into a pile, which is kind of like what I do right now. Turn it over and it's just a pile. I'm gonna build one of these this summer, hopefully. Maybe not that big, but like a 3-tiered compost. So with pallets or something really cheap. And then there's another one I just thought of that I don't know if you have heard about, is like the terracotta, like they look like planters. And I just learned about those recently, but there's like 3, and then you have peat pellets that you put in, and then like newspaper, and you rotate them. So like you put your food scraps in the top bin, and then when that's full, you like lower it down to the bottom, and then you fill this one up, and then you lower that down when it's filled up.
Oh.
It's like you rotate these 3 pots that sit together, and they have holes going through, and then you lay your like leaves or newspaper. Like it's nice if you're living in an apartment or have a small patio, and it's just like maybe 3 or 4 feet high, and there's 3 pots that you just keep rotating, and it just composts naturally in there. And it's aerated obviously with those holes, and that was a really unique one that I haven't really had that much experience with, but simple enough. So, and then for anybody who's maybe watching this recording later, this one on the bottom left is a Verma composting, Permaculture. So that's basically composting with worms. I have one in my kitchen, which is crazy to have worms in your kitchen. So when I moved in, I didn't even know it was there. And then I was like, what's in this bucket? And it's worms and dirt, and your compost goes in there. So I haven't had too much experience with the vermiculture until recently, but basically you get a certain kind of worm and you put them in soil and you can put your food scraps, and we kind of like break them up into smaller bits and lay them on one side of the bin, and then your worms come and eat them all, and then at some point you'll have nice, really rich, dark compost, and then there's worm poop in there too, which is even better for your garden. And then you have like 2 buckets together, and there's some resources at the end of this section to show you if you want to go and find how to make a vermiculture composting bin. But then there's 2 buckets together, and then the liquid will go on the bottom, and it's kind of like compost tea, so it's really packs a nice nutrient-rich punch for your garden. So that's another like way if you want to compost in an apartment. I have a friend who wants to do that where she's living right now because she doesn't have a yard to do something bigger like these pallet bins, or like I have one of these as well, the plastic top right hand one where leaves and stuff go. So yeah, so here's some resources for anybody who wants to know more. I just want to do a really quick overview of the composting in the area and what you can do. And I can be available for more questions if you have anything that comes up later. But the Beltrami County Organics website, so if you go to Beltrami County's website, you can go to departments, go all the way down to solid waste, and then there's different tabs on the side for organics composting, and it explains their program. It gives you a sign-up sheet if you want to sign up for composting, and then it also has like a Beltrami County guide specifically for what is compostable in Beltrami County, which includes a lot of different things. And then you can also go to the MPCA's website for composting in your backyard. They have a really nice article to get you started and different ideas of like what would work well for your specific situation. And then the Natural Resource Defense Council, I believe, NRDC, their website, if you just search composting on there, they have like Composting 101 and a bunch of cool articles. And then they have the one about if you want to get started in permaculture, and different information on that. And then Save the Food, because composting is great, but we should be reducing our waste first and foremost. So Save the Food is a great website for resources on like how to reduce food waste, because I think it's like $1,000 a month for a family of 4, or like 14. It's in a different presentation I have, but we waste a lot of food, and so that's money. And it's not just the money that you waste, but it's like all the resources that came into producing that food and transporting that food and bringing it to the grocery store and refrigerating that food, and then you buy it and you bring it home, and there's transportation there. So it's a whole system. So saving food from being wasted in the first place should be the most important thing. And then composting scraps. Ooh, Diane, do you do your own, what's it called? Like, do you make veggie stock or meat stock at all?
Do I do what?
Like make your own veggie stock?
Oh, yes, yes. I'm sorry, I just didn't hear you well. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bone broth and veggie stock. Yeah.
Yeah. So what
Yeah,
is
the bones, pardon me?
Go ahead.
The bones just go into the freezer until it's time to make stock.
And do you make veggie stock the same way?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like take all like veggies,
All the scrap?
put them in a freezer bag and freeze it. And then when I want to make stock, I just kind of put them all in a big kettle and then cover it with water and let it boil for a couple hours at least to get all those flavors out. And then you have like really good veggie stock. And so then you kind of use that scrap wasted food in another more beneficial way before you compost it. So I just wanted to throw that in there too. So it's cool that you are making your own meat and veggie stocks for your soup.
Yeah, it's good to have that reminder about the veggie stock. I do it occasionally, but I tend to not have very many veggie scraps because I use everything.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but are you talking about like cutting off the ends of carrots and things like that? Is that what you use?
Yep, and like I'll do the ends of carrots and onion skins and Like,
Oh, sure,
the stuff that you
sure.
wouldn't be able to use or eat. I'm sure there's
Mhm.
some kind of fancy chef that uses onion skins or whatever, but all that good stuff can be used again.
That's a good reminder. Thank you.
So now we'll go into recycling, and if you have any more recycling questions, just feel free to
Okay.
interject them as we go through. So why we should recycle, for me, it boils down to saving resources. So all your plastic comes from fossil fuels and petroleum, natural gas to make all this stuff. So we have to, it's highly energy intensive to get all the resources to make plastic, to make aluminum, to make all sorts of different things that we could, the different products that we can recycle. So instead of having to take those virgin materials out of the earth, we can like recycle our materials instead. And then money, so it's efficient instead of having to, again, like get all the oil and the natural gas and the aluminum and everything else that we need to make these recyclable items in the first place from virgin material. And then obviously for the environment, because that's all damaging our environment, or like we have to take stuff from the environment, natural resources in order to make these products. So we should try to be conserving them as much as possible. So I don't know if that's like how everybody else sees recycling, but do you recycle, Diane?
Oh, yes. Kind of obsessively.
Obsessively? Yep.
Obsessively, yes. I'm
Um,
kind of the recycle police, you know.
yeah. Well, we should get together sometime and talk, because I'm sure we have good ideas of how to help the community in that way, or just nerd out about recycling and composting.
Yeah. I do have one question about recycling.
Yeah.
A couple of young women that I know that are like in their 30s and very, very concerned about all things that are good, like social justice and other things. They were just taking all of their garbage and recycling everything, just all of their garbage bags to of whatever is behind Target, and they were not separating anything. And they said, well, they don't. They said, well, there's no point in it because it's not. The garbage bin is just full of everything anyway, and it's anyway. I just didn't know what to say. How does that work?
Yeah, and unfortunately, I get that a lot too.
Okay.
That people, there's a lot of, I should have added a segment of like myths. I want to start like I'm part of this Bemidji City Sustainability Committee, so that's part of a city council person is on the committee, and it's through the city of Bemidji. And they have a Facebook page, and I kind of want to put out some information about recycling myths and why people think that recycling doesn't actually get recycled. During my time as a Green Corps member at Baltimore County, I actually found out that it's illegal for the haulers to like separate, like say that they're separating materials. So for example, your Target bin behind Target where you can put all your recycling, that is only a recycling drop-off point. So they shouldn't be putting garbage in there because they're contaminating the recycling stream.
Yeah.
But since we are separating those things and those are county operated bins, it would be illegal for us. And I think the MPCA comes down on you for doing that, for us to combine that recycling that we've already separated and put it into the garbage. So I actually know that people are fined for doing that, and not like residents and commercial businesses, but like your haulers. So if the city of Bemidji offered recycling pickup and they weren't, and which they don't, but if they offered recycling pickup for houses or businesses, and then they put that material into the waste stream that went to the incineration or landfill, they would be fined for that. Or like they would get in trouble. I think, I'm not sure if this is public information or should I say that, but I know that a hauler was fined by the MPCA for doing that once, or like for a few times. but they don't do that normally. Like that's not how, like it doesn't work like that. So if you put stuff in the recycling bin and a hauler picks it up, like the Beltrami County, so if they're putting their recycling in the bin at behind Target, that is in fact being recycled. And I'm going to show, I think after this slide, how that system works.
Okay.
And I actually talked with John Steiner, who is the solid waste director at Polk County, who runs our material recovery facility. And then they also like follow that stream. And I have his email in front of me of like where our recycling ends up, if that makes sense. So it doesn't just like end at the material recovering facility, it gets shipped and then made into new products. So
Okay.
yeah, it's a tricky subject. It's very complicated, and I learned a lot working at Beltrami County Solid Waste and diving a little bit deeper in like how that process works and like what happens to it and all that good stuff. Does that help your question?
Yeah. So I don't know what the people should be doing with their stuff behind Target. Just put it all in the one bin and not worry about it? Is that?
No, because that's affecting the recycling. So we have, and I'm gonna maybe have Kate post this or even leave these flyers that I made last year on Earth Day. So this is for Beltrami County, and so this is what you can recycle, what's compostable, contact information. But then on the backside in this green box, there's actually like the locations in Bemidji that you can put your recycling, and most of those are our solution for like not offering curbside recycling or whatever. And so those are like drop-off points. So like behind Target, or there is one in Pinewood, there's a Black Duck transfer station, there's a 10 Lakes rural site, and then there's one way up in Washkish. So we have like a few rural sites that are only for recycling, and then there's ones that have like a garbage compactor and a recycling compactor, but you should be separating that material. And if they don't want to separate their waste, then they should definitely be putting it in the trash compactor, not the recycling, because that's contaminating it and it's not efficient. So that wastes taxpayer like money and dollars and resources. So if they don't want to recycle, everything should go in the trash.
Okay.
And not
Thank
at
you.
Target, because Target's only for recycling.
Okay.
There's like big signs there.
Okay.
Big huge signs that say recycling only. But yeah, like people drop off mattresses and TVs, and they leave stuff at these rural drop-off sites all the time. So I'm like, it does get sorted out, and I'll show that in a second. But number 1 and number 2 plastics are the only ones that Beltrami County accepts. So these are like the little logos at the bottom of your recycling or your pop bottle, your milk carton, or not your milk carton, like your plastic milk jug cartons are not recyclable in Beltrami County. They are recyclable, just not here. So we only do number 1s and number 2s. And the little triangle with the chasing arrows is not a recycling sign. And there's a whole story about that if you want to look into it, about how that was created and who, like, it was designed, and it was used for an Earth Day a long time ago. And then plastic corporations, from my understanding, kind of took that logo and started doing this with it. And so it's purposely confusing, I think, because everybody sees that chasing arrow sign and understands it as a recycling logo. And just because a product has the chasing arrows on it does not mean that it's recyclable. So
And sometimes it's just too hard to read the numbers.
yeah, exactly. And it's the same thing with compostable and biodegradable plastics that look like plastic. It's just like kind of etched in there, really not clear.
Right.
But basically that is only for the plastic manufacturers to know what resin was used to make that plastic product. So number 1 and number 2 are like your most common plastics that are pop bottles, milk carton or milk jugs, like your Tide laundry detergent bottle, and I have pictures to show too, but, and then number 5 could be recyclable in Beltrami County. It is not yet. It just takes, like our MRF, our recycling facility at Beltrami or in Polk County could recycle it, but there's just obstacles in the way of doing that. Like hiring another person to stand on the line and separate it. So, and then number 7 is that other one, and we'll talk about that with wish cycling. It's a tricky one. So this is a really quick, what is recyclable in Beltrami County. So we want to have recycling work, and it needs to be a little more clear and more education done for how to recycle properly. So we need to recycle the yes things and keep the no things out. So then there's a saying, so when you're in out, throw it out. So that helps keep recycling clean. So you can always recycle bottles and cans. And this is new. I think a lot of people think that you have to take the caps off, but you can leave caps on. So you can leave your lids on everything, water bottles, pop bottles, your Tide bottle, milk jugs, all that. And then boxes and paper, so they should be flattened ideally and then dry. So anything like any cardboard that gets wet, you shouldn't recycle as contamination. And then glass should be emptied and caps on. And so that's an important thing that I would like to add in, is that all those bottles should be empty. So if you throw a full pop bottle into the recycling, or even if it's got a little bit of liquid in there, it's not going to be recycled, because there's little optical sorters that read the code of plastic resin that material is made out of, and it puffs a blast of air at it, and so it will go on these conveyor belts and go through the whole system. The optical sorter will identify if it's a number 1 or 2, and it will blast air at it, and that pop bottle will shoot over if it's a number 2 and fall into that conveyor belt, and if it's number 1, it'll just keep falling down and into a number 1 collection bin. So if it's got liquid in it, it won't be able to be recycled properly, because there's weight into it, you know, if that makes sense. See that?
Yes. So yeah, I always wash everything before I put it in the recycling, but how do the lids get removed?
So sometimes when I've heard this is like, so you can leave your lids on because they will be recycled with that bottle, and they're usually made out of the same plastic. So like a pop bottle will be made out of similar plastic. And if you put your lids in there loose, they won't be recycled, because anything smaller than your fist cannot go through the sorting material or the sorting facility. Like, it's too small, and it'll just fall through and be sorted out as waste.
Oh,
So that's
okay.
if you want, like if you have a plastic lid on a plastic bottle, you can leave it on because it will be recycled.
Didn't know that.
Fall through. Otherwise, you can just throw it in the trash. Like, it doesn't need to be. And then like after all of your plastic recycling and all the recycling is sorted, it gets baled into like these ginormous bales. And then sometimes those, like, it's crushed and packed, so then the caps like might pop off, or but they will be like shipped to the plant that like processes and cleans and sorts their plastic and then makes new bottles and all that stuff. So caps can be left on now, which is confusing when they change the rules, but then equipment changes or sorting materials change, and then something's recyclable and something's not recyclable, or like they want you to do this. And then speaking of like washing bottles out, it just needs to be like spoon clean. So your peanut butter jar doesn't have to be perfectly clean. Your hummus container doesn't have to be wiped and like washed to be recycled. I think that deters a lot of people from recycling, is because then it's a lot more work involved in doing that. But it just has to be like spoon clean. So if you could like take out all the peanut butter, it should be empty. So there shouldn't be like half a container of peanut butter left in there, or a soup can with half the soup left in. But it should be fairly empty and then spoon clean. It doesn't have to be washed.
So what about like wine bottles that are glass, but they have a metal cap on them?
That will be sorted out. So when it
Leave
goes,
it on?
yeah, you can leave all, like when I've talked to John, I'm like, what about my salsa, like glass salsa jar with the metal lid? And that all kind of gets
So
sorted out.
leave it. Okay, so leave those on.
Yep.
I've been, I'm so glad to know this because I've been taking lids off thinking, oh, that can't possibly be that we should leave them on. But now I know it's better to do that. So,
And so like metal pop bottle lids, like if you want those to be recycled, and some of those metals, like I'm not as educated on this, but I would assume that some of those metals aren't to the grade that they'd even want to recycle them. But anything that's really small, like smaller than your fist, whether it's like a plastic lid or a metal lid, or like shredded paper can't be in the recycling because it will just fall through.
okay.
But if you want something to be recycled, like the bottle caps, like metal bottle caps, like you can take those off and put them into like a larger soup can that's metal, and then close that up, or like put a lid on that, and then all that metal and the smaller metal will be recycled.
Oh, okay.
So because otherwise it will be like the glass is crushed, so the lid doesn't really matter because like all the glass is crushed into little pieces and melted down, and then all that contamination or whatever else shouldn't be in there with the glass or the wine bottle or whatever will be taken care of. So, oops, sorry.
Okay.
So I'll just go. Do you have any more questions first?
Nope.
So
Thank you.
I'll go over some important things. So they don't want bags in recycling anymore. So like your Target bags or Walmart shopping bags or whatever, those can't go in the recycling. They really mess up the recycling facility equipment. So when they go through the conveyor belts, they get all tangled up, and then it takes a lot of manpower, and it's dangerous because they have to go in there with box cutters and like cut it all out. So it gets really tangled. But you can recycle plastic bags at like some retail locations accept them. I think I heard that Walmart accepts. I don't know if you shop at Walmart, but Walmart has like a film plastic recycling place.
And Lucan's takes plastic bags.
And Lucan's does.
Uh-huh.
I'd be interested to know where they send those. So like there's different things that you do with film plastic, is because when plastic's recycled, it's kind of like downcycled. And then unless it's made into like a durable good, like a plastic Adirondack chair or a park bench or playground equipment or whatever, or like deck boards is popular. So like film plastic is just at such a low quality grade plastic that it's not great.
Right.
So hopefully they're doing something good with all those film plastics. And then no batteries or electronics should be put into the recycling. So batteries are flammable and hazardous, and there's actually been like fires in recycling facilities and in garbage trucks or whatever, because like when they get crushed, they can start fires, and garbage is flammable material, so that's dangerous. So keep all your batteries out, and you can bring them to retail or to your solid waste transfer station. So like in Bemidji, you can bring them there, and they have a place for all your batteries and light bulbs and such. The other thing to keep out is, like, an always know, is like no cords, hoses, or chains, or your Christmas tree lights, because those get tangled in the recycling equipment as well. So if you can, if they're still usable, donate cords, donate extension cords or your hose. But if it's not, it should be brought to the transfer station, and it could be put in the bypass lane. And this is confusing, but the bypass lane at the transfer station means that it bypasses all of the recycling equipment at the MRF, and that is where your cat litter should go as well, because cat litter just goes through the conveyor belts, or the cords and hoses goes through and it gets all tangled up, or the cat litter is just too small and falls through. So all of that kind of stuff, and they can direct you at the transfer station, but that should go in the bypass lane because it causes problems. So it just bypasses all of the sorting equipment, and it goes straight to the landfill or the incinerator, depending on where they sort that out to. cat litter is super tricky. I had no idea how many people, like, it's just like, if you don't know, you don't, you don't know. And there's no good information on like when you go there, like you're not gonna ask the transfer station attendants, like, where does this go and where does this go? Like a lot of people just assume that household trash is anything in your house and it can go into a compactor or will go to the transfer station and get sorted sorted out. But there's certain things that just cause problems. So cords, hoses, chains, cat litter. So fun stuff. So I'm gonna go through this really quick because I don't know how we're doing on time, Kate. You're good?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a little cute infographic by Dakota Valley Recycling in Minnesota. And so this is kind of how the process works. So if we had curbside recycling, we would have a truck come pick it up from our house. We have the rural transfer stations and the pickup locations. So it's picked up by a hauler, the county or city of Bemidji does that for us, or waste management. The haulers bring that recycling to our transfer station first for smaller stuff. And then the big compactors that you see go right to the material recovery facility in Polk County. When it goes to the transfer station in Bemidji, it is tipped onto the tipping floor. So the garbage truck literally tips all of that waste onto the tipping floor. And for those who are concerned that when you go into the transfer station and you go and do recycling your garbage and that you see it kind of go into the same place, there's two different bays, one for recycling and one for trash. And now they've changed that so that public perception is a little different because now they've put compactors in those bays so that people can see that it is separated. Like the trash goes into a trash compactor instead of just on the tipping floor, and the recycling goes into the recycling compactor instead of on the tipping floor. And then those full compactors are brought to the MRF. If the recycling is or garbage is tipped on the tipping floor, then it's basically picked up like this with a little truck and a forklift, put in a trailer, and that trailer is gone to the material recovery facility. So at Polk County, there are still workers who sort through the trash. So they're like quality control people. And our machinery that we've updated recently at Polk County does a lot of the work. So there's fancy equipment, and I have some videos if you want to watch more in depth about how that works. So there's people who help to sort that trash out. So cardboard and paper is separated, and it goes through a belt, and you can see that in the video if you're interested in watching that. So cardboard and paper is separated out, and then the remaining plastics, glass, and metals continue down a conveyor belt. And then there's magnets that pull out the magnetic metals, and then they sort that by magnets. So large magnets collect steel cans and are sorted. And then an eddy current draws aluminum cans from the stream. So then that's when we get to the density blower, which redirects plastic, which is us talking about. There's like an optical sorter that blows air, so it'll like beam the plastic bottle and be like, that's a number one, and then it puffs air at it and it goes into one stream. And if it's a number two, it falls into another stream, and that's how they sort out plastics. And that's why that resin matters. And then anything that is like a number 5 or something that gets put in the recycling will be sorted out and will be treated as trash. Black plastic, I believe, is also not recyclable in Beltrami County. It usually, like I've toured transfer stations and material recovery facilities in the cities, and they don't want black plastic because the optical sorter cannot tell what resin of plastic it is, which is very interesting. Oh. So I was like, all those takeout containers that are black, you can't recycle them, which is a shame. Like, why do they have to be black? And then black plastic is also like a less valued plastic because it's black, so they can't dye it a new color. So it would have to remain black plastic. But like some material recovery facilities do accept that, but you just want to check your local. I'm assuming that most people watching this will be watching for Beltrami County, but it might be So that's the main materials that we recycle. So they're all sorted out into number 1 and 2. This is from the city, so we don't have this number 5 recycling yet. And number 5 is also a lesser valued commodity. So all recycling is viewed as a commodity. So it's bought and traded and has money involved in it. So number 5 is just a lesser grade. So we don't sort that out. And then there's just more work involved in doing more. And then they would have to have the markets to sell all this product to make new products. And so we just don't have the market for recycled goods changes. It's like the stock market, just like goes up and down. So it's all depending on like how much oil costs, or like how much a barrel of oil costs, or like your gas prices. So you can kind of tell how well the recycling market is doing based on gas prices, because then they'll want more recycled material instead of using expensive oil at the time, if that makes sense. And then our glass is the last thing to leave the recycling, or the recycling sorting, and that's pulverized into little bits. I feel like I was just thinking something to add to that. Yeah. Yep. So that's pretty much what happens to your recycling, and from there, it's all baled up and then it's sent to different places. So for Beltrami County, your non-ferrous metals, loose or baled, goes from local metal dealers into St. Paul or Winnipeg. Your OCC, which is your cardboard, will go to LDI Fibers in Becker, Minnesota. Your paper, like your white office paper, goes to Floodwood, Minnesota, Mason City, Iowa, Glencoe, Minnesota, or RMM. And then your plastics go to St. Cloud, Minnesota, also to RMM. And then, I don't know if that's in the email that I sent you. I knew what RMM stood for, but it's basically a recycling company who buys the plastic from us. And then glass, the only Minnesota glass recycler is Strategic Materials, which would not previously accept from us because we are in like up north and it's hard to get to recycling markets. So hopefully this changes, because glass is a good material to recycle because it can be recycled more times than plastic can. So like plastic kind of downgrades, like I said before, whereas glass can be recycled more times. And then paper also, like your office paper is high quality paper, but then when that gets recycled down so many times, it turns into like lower grade paper products, and then like the strands of paper get shorter and shorter, so then you can do less with it. So paper isn't infinitely recyclable. Plastic isn't infinitely recyclable. I think glass even, like I think that glass they used to kind of say that glass is, but I think it also kind of degrades as like it can only be recycled so many times before it has to be turned into something else. And then aluminum and steel are really good to recycle because it can be recycled many, many times. So I should find a good graphic on that. I have good numbers to show how many times. Oh, okay. So Diane, if you want to look into the plastics and how our material recycling facility works in Polk County, there is information on that on the Beltrami County website, and there's cool videos to show exactly how it's separated and what happens to it.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah, I'll do that.
Cool. Oops, I don't want to go. Sorry. So, yeah. So do you have any questions?
Not right now. I'm writing things down.
Okay. Cool. Well, Kate just reminded me that it's been an hour, so I don't want to be conscious of your time. So if you sign up for an hour class, if you need to take off, that's good.
I thought it was an hour and a half.
Was it an hour? We didn't put a time on this one. Yeah. I do have like the sustainable living things to talk about that I could cover really quickly if you're interested, Diane, or we can end it.
Yes. yes, I'm interested. I was expecting that it would go to 7 anyway, so,
Oh,
and
okay.
I don't need to leave. So,
You don't need to leave? Okay. Well, I'll just go over a few tips that I brought for sustainable living. Hopefully this will continue without playing, because I don't want that to play. I'm just gonna pause that. So these videos are on the county website if you want to check them out later.
great.
This is just like little graphics that I made as a Green Corps member talking about wish cycling. So we want to recycle a lot and we want to refill up our recycling cart, but we should be mindful and recycle right and not put like coffee cups in there and number 7 plastics, because they are like a catch-all for the plastic manufacturers, or styrofoam or hoses like I talked about. And then this is just a simple, like this is what we should be focusing on: recycling, cans, glass, paper, and plastic. And in Beltrami County, only number 1 and 2.
Okay.
So here's some cool resources that you can check out. Beltrami County Recycling on the Beltrami County website. The MPCA has really good resources for recycling, and then the NRDC again. So I'll just go through this. The sustainable living. So we've kind of talked about the different aspects of the Minnesota waste hierarchy. So landfill is like the least preferred, moving up to reduction, which is what we always want to focus on, like reducing food waste, reducing the amount of plastic that we're using, focusing on reuse and repair, and recycling and composting are kind of like at an even, or I value composting more than recycling, but they're kind of at the same area. This is a cute little comic about linear economy. So just buying all the goods, throwing them all away. Recycling is it kind of takes a few different life cycle spins before it goes in the trash, or hopefully it's made into a durable good. And then the circular economy is what we're aiming for. So the 5 R's, this is a few more than what is normally said, like reduce, reuse, recycle. But I like this one, refuse first. So like refuse things that you don't need. Like when you go to like conferences, or I think of like the state fair, like when you go through the building and you see all the things, and then they want to give you like a million pens and like all these extra like things that you don't, like they just kind of sit around and don't serve a good purpose. Reducing is really important above recycling, and then reuse and repair, and then we want to rot the rest or compost it. So there's some tips about shopping. I like to highlight like buying well-made products and having something that's going to last for a long time is sustainable, rather than buying something that won't last as long and having to replace it. So more things end up in the landfill when they're not quality materials or durable goods. So when you can, buy well-made products. And then I like to borrow items that I rarely use. So I recently just built a sauna, and so I don't have necessarily all the tools that I need to build a sauna, and I'm not going to go out and like buy all these new tools that I might use once or twice, or like not very frequently. So I borrow stuff. And then for food waste and packaging, this is where a lot of waste comes in for the majority of people, is like with your food waste. And then food packaging, so like all of our food is in packaged like packaging materials, and then you have to most of the time throw those away, and then recycling. So that's where the reducing comes in, where we want to reduce as much as possible first. And so I like to buy bulk at Harmony. I know Diane, you shop here, so hopefully.
Yeah, I like to buy bulk also.
Yeah, so that helps a lot with cutting down on food packaging. And I should actually take a picture of Harmony's new bulk bin section, because they just put in all new gravity bins. So like they're filled with your grains and your rice and your peas and beans and granola and all sorts of good things. And then you can just bring in your own reusable bags, which is what I do. So I brought in a few things. So like this is how I buy bulk food, is I have like reusable bags that I fill up with bulk products like flour and oatmeal and everything in here, instead of having that packaged food.
Can you buy those bags at Harmony?
Yeah, so they have a few different styles at Harmony. They have produce bags too, instead of using like plastic produce bags. I don't even bag my produce. But sometimes like if I buy mushrooms or something small, I'll put it in one of these drawstring bags. And the ones that I have actually have like a tear on them, so they know how much to, like the weight when they weigh your produce. Like they'll take off, like there's a little tear thing on the bag.
Oh,
Um,
great idea.
yeah. And then, so I really like buying bulk food, and you can actually find a lot in the bulk section, and like buying from the produce, and like Harmony's really good about not having everything wrapped in plastic. Like you go to other grocery stores and all their produce is wrapped, like their peppers and their cucumbers and
I know.
tomatoes are in a plastic container. Whereas if you go to some grocery stores, if you look around, you can find those, like they come from the earth. They don't need to be wrapped in plastic.
Right.
Find those things not wrapped in plastic, hopefully. So, and then you just like, I lived zero waste for a while, and you just eat less processed food. You eat less packaged food. That way, it was a struggle. I did it as an experiment. It was interesting, and I think I did it for like a good 3 or 4 months or something, and then I started traveling, and it was I wasn't prepared to live zero waste while traveling for a long period of time. So, but yeah, so cutting food waste, a simple thing to do is like bring your own tote bag to the store and shop with that instead of taking like plastic or paper bags. That's a really simple, well-known one, is like buy a reusable bag and use it. Don't buy 5 of them and have them and don't use them. Like just have as many as you need. And because it's not, the idea of all this reusable stuff is not to have it and like use it once in a while, because then it's not getting its value, if that makes sense, Dan.
Yes, yes, it does.
I think you already bring your own bags, and I'm sure you do a lot of sustainable living already.
I do always try to take in bags, and sometimes I forget, but then if I end up with a paper bag, I take it to the food shelf. When I have a collection of paper bags, and I take them to the food shelf, but mostly I just take in my own bags.
Yeah, and like I do the same thing. Like if I come in and I don't have a paper bag, or I didn't bring my reusable bag, sometimes you're just in those situations, and that's okay, because I have plenty of paper bags, and Harmony actually accepts them. So like you can bring them back and bring them to the food shelf, or bring them back to Harmony, or repurpose them for something else. They're great for drawing on. I've had kids draw on the paper bags. Another product that I really like to use, also sold at Harmony, is like bees wrap. So they just got this in, Kate told me, because I brought in my bees wrap. And have you seen this, Diane?
Yes, I have. I have a piece of that.
You have a piece of it?
Well, someone gave me a piece large enough to wrap a loaf of homemade bread.
Yeah, so there's really big ones, and then there's smaller ones, and it replaces saran wrap.
Yeah, it's great stuff.
Yeah, so I really like that stuff, and then it's compostable, so it's beeswax and like some kind of fiber that's made into a paper. Maybe it even says on this one. They're all kind of different, I've noticed. And so like when you're done using it, or if it gets, they do wear out, and I've heard that you can wax them, which I haven't tried, to prolong life, or you can just like rip it up and compost it. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So it's a cool product. This is also, I got this a while back at Harmony, so I carry this around if I know I'm going to be eating somewhere or bringing lunch, and it's a hot container, keeps your food hot. It's like thermos. It's great. And then if you're ever, it's multi-purpose too. Like I've had coffee in this when I forget a coffee cup, but these are great little tools, like to bring lunch and food, or to even get bulk stuff from Harmony or whatever. The more versatile the product, the better, and I like that. And then another simple one is bringing your water bottle everywhere with you instead of using plastic water bottles. And a lot of people are doing that currently, like in today's age, like we've kind of smartened up about that, and a lot of people bring their own bags now and like use their own water bottle instead. Another shameless product plug from Harmony, which I saw when I was walking back here, and I haven't actually used these, but like if you a really straw lover and want to use straws, Clean Canteen has these like straws that you can use for your water bottle and such. I just try to get by without using straws. I'm not don't really need to use them, but other people love them. So if you don't want to have a bunch of plastic straws, which are single-use plastics, this is a great alternative. So, and then another thing that I do is like package lunch and like not have plastic bags. So there's a lot of different products out there now for like bringing food or like lunch. So I like use a container like this. So there's like 2 different compartments, or there's like bento boxes. And there's wood ones and metal ones and all sorts of different things. So there's a lot of different options for zero waste living or just sustainable living. And I like to remind people that we don't need a handful of people doing zero waste perfectly. We need millions of people doing it imperfectly. So whatever you do and that you can do in your own life, like bringing your reusable shopping bag or bringing your water bottle, it makes a big impact. It might not seem like it's a big, like that big, but one person doing that cuts down plastic pollution and waste greatly. And then there's a lot of people doing that, so it makes a larger impact. So, and then just doing whatever you can do. So I used to be zero waste for a while to experiment and like figure out what sources of waste that I can reduce and change in my lifestyle. And so that was a really eye-opening experience, but we don't all have to live zero waste, and it's a big commitment to do that. So if you can do one of those things or 2 of those sustainable living swaps, like easy things to do, and then add into them as you learn or as you find different things that you're able to do. I switched over to like a shampoo bar instead of shampoo in bottles, because that just like, when you think about how many shampoo and conditioner bottles you go through, or like how many soap bottles and lotion and all the products that you use, it adds up greatly. So Harmony actually started carrying High Bar, which is amazing. I love it. It's so great. And I was so happy that they started carrying this, but this is a great bar shampoo. Like I tried so many, and so many are not fantastic. So I don't know if you've heard about shampoo bars, but those are a great way to reduce waste too.
So another thing is, trying to avoid all the plastics for laundry detergents, and I like BioClean products. They make a powdered laundry detergent in a cardboard box, but it's not sold at Harmony, but I found it at Lucan's North.
So it's in a cardboard container instead of plastic?
Yes, and it's a powder, not a liquid.
Yeah.
That's what I could figure out to do, but what about those little 7th generation, those little things that are wrapped in a plastic that dissolves? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, like those pods, like Tide Pods.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know that 7th generation made those. Like the little pod things.
Well, I might not, the sound is a little distorted, so I might not be sure of what you said, but you can buy a bag of 7th generation laundry detergent that is little, like, they're not cubes, but they're, just a little thing of detergent that is held together by what looks like a plastic wrap, but it dissolves in the wash. So that's a way to avoid bottles.
Yeah, they're sold in a bag, and like the bag is like I've learned about this, but like the bag is better than like the hard plastic container.
Uh-huh. But it's still a plastic bag, isn't it?
It's still a plastic bag, and
Yeah.
the Tide Pod or like those little laundry pods. I actually was just talking to somebody about those the other day and wondering like how much they break down because they're dissolvable, like the plastic or whatever is that coating dissolves in water, but is that biodegradable or is those
Yeah.
microplastics ending up into the water and that ends up into the waste stream because the water treatment plant cannot process like those microbeads that are in like toothpaste or like your
Mhm.
face scrub or whatever. So those kind of just like
Yeah.
there's microfibers and beads like in the Antarctic now that they found. So I'm actually wanting to research those pods and see like
Uh-huh.
what that material is made out of and how they dissolve and how they're marketed or like what.
Yeah. So
Um,
I've wondered about those too. I've bought them, but then I felt unsure about the bag and the plastic coating. So right now, I feel like the best thing I can find is the BioClean powdered detergent in a box.
yeah,
But
yeah, and that yeah, that sounds like a good swap for like a plastic container. Um, I get laundry soap here, or I might try to do like that powdered stuff, but it's like concentrated, so it's like a smaller bottle of seventh generation, and it lasts just as much as like a big one. So I'm reducing my plastic waste, and it's a
yes.
cardboard like bottle, something something. Um,
Oh, okay. At Harmony?
yeah, yeah,
Okay, I should look at that.
yeah.
All right.
But the powder sounds like a good idea, and those pods I've actually seen like packaging for like sustainable like design, and those
Mhm.
pods are actually like Tide Pods wouldn't have them in a plastic hard shell container, but those pods would simply be wrapped in a cylinder in a sleeve that was like perforated tear edges. So the pod itself would be the packaging, and so then you'd have like no packaging that they would just dissolve in the washing machine. And so all like the marketing and the advertisement, like Tide logo or seventh generation logo would be on that cylinder of pods, and like then you'd be left with nothing when you use them all up. So there's a lot of
Sure.
ways that hopefully we'll move to sooner rather than later for reducing package design and not making it an individual and personal choice, but like having those corporations and companies making those switches instead of um,
Mhm.
we're going through the extra work and going the extra mile to reduce their waste.
Right. Good point.
Yeah.
Also, I have in the last year or two, I don't know, I've ordered bamboo toothbrushes because I worry about all those plastic toothbrushes.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like one solution.
Yep. And that's what
The bamboo ones are nice. You what?
I use bamboo toothbrushes too.
Okay, yeah, they're nice.
Yeah. And I'm not sure. I think Harmony sells those too. But yeah, those are a great
Mhm.
solution. I think I've even seen like bamboo toothbrushes that have a replaceable head. So you just kind of like pop off the bristles and then you replace
Oh,
that instead of replacing the whole handle.
oh, I haven't seen that. That's a
Yeah.
good idea.
And I've I just saw something online that was cool that was like using the bamboo toothbrushes and then you can break off the bristles and then use them as like gardening sticks, like with for labeling plants or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right. I think I've seen that too. Yeah.
but yeah, the bamboo ones are good, and I don't even know like maybe those are some of them say compostable on their box, so that you
Mm-hmm.
can compost them. But it depends on what that company puts in their handle along
Sure.
bamboo. But you have to break off the plastic bristles first before composting it, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was it. That was just a picture of like all the reusable
Oh,
swaps to do
awesome.
bags and mason jars are
Yeah.
super easy. And then I just wanted to add that like I was showing products and different things to use. Um, but the whole point of like sustainable living is not going out and like green consumerism is a thing, like buying all the cool green new things that you think is gonna uh,
Yeah.
save waste, but you just end up buying a lot of stuff. And that's the opposite of reducing waste.
Right.
It's really going to be helpful to you and like serve a purpose and live a long life of like eating soup and coffee out of, then it makes sense. Other times it's just like using what you have. So like this is a plastic container, but it's what I have and I use it a lot. So it's going to be in the long run, it's going to be used more than if I go out and purchase more things than I need.
Sure.
Yep. I also use like a cant fork everywhere, so I don't have to use plastic
Yeah.
stuff.
Yep.
I carry that around with
Uh-huh.
like a weirdo. You have a cant fork with you, but it comes in handy more often than you think. So, and mason jars are a super easy fix. Like if you don't want to buy a container or have a lunch container, I make granola and I put granola in there and take it for breakfast. Or I put oatmeal in there, or you can put salad in a jar and you put the dressing on the bottom, put all your salad in there, and then dump it out on a plate when you're ready to eat. So it's mason jars are very versatile and handy things to have.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go through some questions, but it sounds like we've already kind of, you have like the two or sustainable swaps that you've already made in your life. Or maybe we want to move on to ones that you've kind of had questions about. Okay. Yeah. No, you're good. But and that was it.
Okay. Did you get to finish?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Aili. I learned a lot from you.
Yeah. Thank you for coming, Diane.
I really appreciate it. Good job by you.
Thanks. We'll have to talk later too sometime.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. There. Come on.